Welcome to the Unleashed podcast, where we believe that life is better when it is lived on purpose. My name is Molly Brunk, and I'm joined with pastor at Be Hope Church, Brad Thompson, and we are again with Becky Brown. And if you have not watched the previous episode, stop right now and go listen or watch to that episode. We do a whole great introduction of Becky, but ain't nobody got time for that for the second episode. So we're just with our friend Becky now. And Becky is a counselor at New Life Ministries, and we are talking about boundaries. So last episode, what did we talk about?
Well, we talked about who needs boundaries.
Brad.
I don't need boundaries. You don't need boundaries.
Brad needs boundaries.
I was just going to say, we might need to go back to that first episode.
He's going to need to re-listen to that. And so
apparently, since I need them, we're talking about how do we make boundaries work for our lives?
Yeah. So last episode was all about the what, and now it's the how.
Yeah. So I'll just recap real quick, and then we have a fumble moment with Molly.
Doesn't happen very often.
I love this. Becky did a great job of defining boundaries. She said it's a defining line. And I love this idea that a lot of times when we don't have boundaries, we act out of reactivity instead of responsibility. And I love this idea that boundaries actually come from who we are, out of our values, out of our time, out of our identity, out of our purpose in this life. I love that. So if you didn't get all of it, go back and listen to it. And really what gave me freedom is not taking ownership of other people's feelings when I have to say no. Like, that's a personal takeaway for me. Just knowing that, man, I've done everything I can, and I'm not responsible for how you feel. But I've lived in the way that is in accordance with the mission I've set for my life. And that was so helpful. So freeing, so good. Go back and listen to the previous episode. But Molly has an issue with the word boundaries. And so I would love for you to share.
It's not necessarily the word. It just kind of gives me an ick when I think about it. And I think because this is my hypothesis of why. I think in college, I was in the age where we were normalizing the word boundaries. And I think that it was used and abused of oh, I don't want to do this thing. So I'm going to say, it actually crosses my boundaries, or I'm not I set these boundaries for my life and this pushes me past it. So I'm not going to do it, when it's things that are just maybe challenging or pushes us outside of our comfort zone, things that are good for us to do in life. But we say, it pushes my boundaries, I'm not going to do it. And so I think I've just seen it abused a little bit, where I just don't love the word anymore.
I've written here, it becomes an excuse for accomplishing nothing in life.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there might be something in the middle. It could be that what your experience has been is that it was weaponized, that boundaries were weaponized, so that it kept people away. It determined that they weren't going to participate. And the interesting thing is, when people say it goes against my boundaries, having to say that out loud is literally expecting the other person to respond in a way that works for them. And there's a million different ways to say that. And we have to honor what works for somebody and what doesn't work for somebody.
Mm-hmm.
So there's somewhere in the middle.
You're fired.
I know.
That works for me. I'm just kidding. I'm totally kidding.
But it just gets messy because the intention behind it gets misconstrued. That's what you're talking about, Molly.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think the more I learn about what boundaries actually are from you, I'm like, oh yeah, they're not that actually bad of things. But I think I was in the self-care age, where it was very much self-care, 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 to the point where it was I don't know if you're doing anything besides self-care. And so, and then I feel like we've kind of balanced that out now, but it was the same thing with boundaries of boundaries, all the stuff. And it was what are you actually doing?
Right.
So, yeah.
Well, but that also gets us into a judgment, and we don't want to be there either.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's surprising when somebody's like, oh no, that's against my boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
And your first reaction might be, okay.
Mm-hmm.
But then it also is good information for you. It's okay, well, that's not the person that I'm going to work with then. I'm going to move on and be okay with that. But that takes practice.
Yeah.
It takes practice.
Yeah. No, that makes sense.
I have the song, this is how I fight my back. You know the song?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Boundaries are how when you said weaponize, I'm like, boundaries how I fight my
Brad just over here
battles.
singing to himself.
Well,
Uh,
but I mean, to your point though, I've heard, because I've done a lot of couples counseling over
Yeah.
my career. And one of the things that happens a lot of times is that they do get weaponized against the person.
Mhm.
You know, you've got, that is against my boundaries. Okay, well, how do we connect?
Mhm.
How do we, how do I recognize what's not going to work for me? But also, where is the negotiation?
Yep.
But there are some clear-cut boundaries that there's a lot of people that need to learn how to say a strong no.
Mhm.
And so, see, it's very, there's some flexibility, but there are clear-cut boundaries too. How's that for confusion?
Oh, I love it. I love it. Let's make it even more confusing.
Okay.
Let's talk about boundaries in work life, home life, personal life. The question I'm wrestling with, and I'm part of a guys group.
Mhm.
We meet at 6:30 on Thursdays,
Mhm.
which is crazy. It's really fun though, because we have business owners and leaders that are part of it. And it's fascinating to me that I hear some of these leaders of companies talk about the difficulty of, like, the problem is they don't hate what they do.
Mhm.
They love what they do.
Right.
I love what I do.
Right.
Like, and I tell people, this is not a job for me. This is not a 9 to 5 where I clock in. Like, it is always on my mind. It is always on my heart. My wife would tell you, it's like something I'm just in all the time. So what do you do when there isn't a difference between your work life and your home life, because what we do for a living is just it is my life. Is this making sense?
Yeah.
Let me make it clear. What do you do when you can't shut off the work at 5 and you're going home and it's just always on your heart, always on your mind?
So you may be sucked into an illusion that your whole life is your work. Now, do you guys remember when I taught the class and we talked about the pie chart, right?
Yes.
Everybody's
I do.
got 24 hours in a day. And yes, your work does consume you. It's part of who you are. The hard part is that if it's all that you are, you're not focused on the other parts that create the benefit of your work. So for example, if you're always work all the time, you're headed for burnout, period. Like there's no boundary there, right? So you actually benefit. I mean, okay, so I know there's this person called Jesus Christ who, when he was on the earth as a man, what kind of time frame did he do as far as his work-life separation?
I mean, he did tell the disciples, there's still daylight left. Why are you quitting?
Okay, you're going to take an obscure verse. Okay. Now, I'm talking about those 40 days
Yeah, right.
where he would just step out. And so here's the thing that you have to keep in mind. Yes, it's all-encompassing. My work's like that. Like when I wake up in the middle of the night, which is rare, but if I do, the brain will kick in.
Yeah.
Did I remember to send that email? Did I check off that other list? Oh, you know what would be a great idea? Like, that's how we're created. But if you're all on all the time for work, you're actually diminishing not only your personal relationships, but also your work.
Yeah.
Because that separation, that boundary makes you better at what you do.
That's good. I want you to know, I am working on this. One of the things I've done is I get home and I leave everything in my car, including my phone. It sits up in my little magnetic holder,
Mm-hmm.
and I leave it all in the car until 7 or 8 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
So-
How's that working for you?
It's great. I'm present.
Mhm.
Well, I feel like I am. I don't
Yeah.
know if I am.
Yeah.
You'll have to ask Janelle.
Yeah, I was
So-
going to say, we'll talk to her.
What do you believe in I hear people use the word work-life balance all the time. Do you believe in that?
I think balance is 1 minute at a time. Did you ever do gymnastics, Brad? When we were like in grade school or junior high, we did like in PE class, there would be a period of time where you do gymnastics and you get up on that balance beam and the instruction was to look at the end of the balance beam Because what you tend to do is you look straight down and you lose your balance.
Oh.
Because your balance is just a minute at a time. It's like riding a bike. When you're riding a bike, as long as you're moving, you keep that balance. But balance is not a permanent state of mind. And that is something that we see.
Can you say that again? That was really good.
Balance is not a permanent state of mind. It isn't. Well, it's like we want that, and then that goes back to your thing where people are like, "Oh, that's not going to work for me."
Mm-hmm.
It's like you got to expand your ability to withstand imbalance.
Yeah,
because that's life. Life be lifing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
No, I think that's really good because one of the things that we are wrestling with of what's the difference between stretching yourself and pushing yourself versus crossing boundaries.
That's good, Molly.
Right. Well, it all goes back to what we talked about last episode about determining your values, what you're about, and deciding, is that going to be what I'm about? Is that, because you're building your legacy, your life story by what you participate in. And stretching yourself, going back to, where people are like, oh no, I can't do that.
Yeah.
You miss out on a lot of things because you can do more than what you think you can do.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to feel the tension. You're going to feel the anxiety. You're going to feel the risk, and you're going to be okay. Your mother is the greatest coach on this. Years ago, she used to run marathons all the time. And I would say, I am not running anywhere. I'm not, if I'm running, somebody's chasing me. I'm not doing that. But then I realized that, I could spend time with her. We'd run together. And what she taught me in that time, and I actually got up to running straight 7.5 miles, which I'm pretty proud of that.
Mm-hmm.
But your mom always says you can do anything for a mile. Mm-hmm. And in those times when you are stretched, you need people around you to say what you can and can't do. Now, on the opposite side of that, our capacity is limited.
Mm-hmm.
And what we tend to do, especially in this 24/7 culture, we take in way too much content. We're exposed to way too much content, and it pushes us beyond our capacity.
Mm-hmm.
That's our capacity. We have limits.
Yeah.
That goes back to the pie chart.
Yeah. No, that's really good. And I feel like that's where I just deleted Instagram and Facebook
Let's
because
go.
I was like, there's so much information about this specific topic where I'm like, I feel so overwhelmed by it.
Right.
And I have deleted it, and now I'm like, oh, I could do that.
It's great.
What?
Not having those accounts to begin with.
Right.
I know.
Are you virtue signaling right now, Brad?
I mean, kind of.
I think you can.
Wait, Becky, talk more because people don't have context for the pie chart.
Yeah.
Becky, we have training for our staff, and she came in and talked about boundaries with our staff. So
this is where we realized Brad had a problem.
Yeah. Would you just quickly talk about the pie chart as one tool for them to understand their time?
Yeah, because a lot of times we can't define our boundaries because we aren't paying attention to what we're actually doing. So one of the ideas was, people will say, well, I don't have a budget. Well, yes, you do. You just need to look at where your money's been going the last couple months. That's your budget. That's how you're spending your money.
It's good.
And same thing with a diet. I don't have a diet. Well, yeah, you do. It's what you're eating every single day. Look back and it'll give you information. So the pie chart idea is each of us have 24 hours in a day. No one has more and no one has less unless Jesus is calling you home. So you have to sit with yourself and you kind of mark out in a 24-hour period, where is my time being spent? Yeah. And so you can start with sleep because that could be a big chunk of time.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe for some, it's not, right? Brad's like, no. But then you determine, is this the way that I want to spend my days? Because your hours equal your days equal your weeks, your months, and it's your life. But a lot of times we are just checking off, like we're just showing up to work and we can't wait to get out of work, can't wait for the weekend. We're wishing our life away as opposed to being determined and on mission in what God has called us to do.
That sounds like a Be Hope employee right there.
She's our most well-paid
Let me just
employee.
say this: if you're thinking about getting out of work or waiting for the weekend, you will never work at Be Hope.
Yeah, exactly. Work
true.
is the weekend.
That's true. It's true, but it's the best job ever. So.
Hey, before we have 5 minutes left. And I wanted you to just give us some practice about how do we set boundaries? How do we create boundaries? But before we do, I also want to ask this one question. I thought this was interesting as Molly and I were preparing. Do you notice generational differences in boundaries? So like for boomers, is it different than somebody who's Gen Z? And is there any way you can give us a 30,000-foot view of?
Yeah, I think one of the big generational differences is time was different back then. It was distinct. You had everything from blue laws on Sunday where nobody was doing anything on Sunday except for going to church. And the majority of people were going to church.
In the Old Testament, they called that the Sabbath.
Yeah. And it depends on who you're talking to. But then on Monday morning, they went to work, they went to school, and there was this rhythm that everybody kind of moved in the same way.
Yeah.
That is all blown out of the water. The younger generations, time is relative. And people work in relative ways. They work remotely. They work all times of the day and night. And and so the boundaries get confused because they're, and it's interesting because from a societal level, from a cultural level, when there are not rhythms that are followed by the mass, you can get a lot of confusion.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And we lose our identities. We don't have really a framework. It's when you remove the fence. Where does your yard begin and end?
Do you find that it creates a disconnect generationally for between employer and employees? Do you find like there's a massive...
Yes. Especially if you've got older generations who are in an administrative level.
Yeah.
And when we all went to remote, even though I've been working remote for 15 years, but when the pandemic hit and everybody had to go home, the older generation's like, everybody's got to get back in. And, everybody has to be at their desk. Well, then we went through this period of like, no, they actually could. Well, guess what? It's all swinging back because of what I just said.
Yeah.
There's the culture that is created when you're together. I think boundaries have changed. I think there also is an awareness of individual ideas, which has created some more boundaries, going back to what you started with, Molly, about what works for some and what won't work for others.
Yeah. So what can we do? Let's make it practical for people listening. What are some ways that we can set boundaries?
Okay, well, you have to define your lines, first of all.
Cool.
Know what you value, what you don't value, what you want to be about. And it's everything like what we talked about the last time. But I think about, everything from your time to your intentions, what you are going to do as far as your work-life balance, your family. Who do you want to be? What do you want to be about? That's where you start. Because if you don't know what your line is, you're going to go to whoever presents and whoever is more powerful than you. The other thing is to set small boundaries. A lot of times when we've been overrun by somebody else's boundaries, we will come out of the gate charging. I am not doing that. I am not doing that. And no. Maybe you have to take a break there, but start saying no in small doses and feeling those feelings, recognizing that your feelings don't mean that you've done something wrong. One of the biggest errors that people make when they set boundaries is they think that when they set a boundary that it's all going to go well and it's going to feel well. And the reality is the other person may not be too happy with you, doesn't mean that your boundary is incorrect.
Okay.
And even if you feel bad, doesn't mean that the boundary is incorrect.
Okay.
And so you practice that feeling and you get insight. Boundaries, if you're struggling with creating boundaries or recognizing that you need some help, you have to connect with somebody because you don't want to be in a reactive mode where you're saying no to everything because of how you're feeling or saying yes to everything to avoid the bad feeling.
Oh, it's good.
That is really good. Do you have any final thoughts, final questions before we wrap up the episode?
No. So, I mean, what I heard you say, things we can do, know who you are, values, identity, mission. Like, one of the ways we say it is a life plan. Like, you have to have a life plan. You have to know what you're about and what you're chasing. And those sort of become the natural markers for what we'll say yes to and what we won't. Right? And I love the idea of, I love the idea of practicing boundaries and not letting your emotions drive the conversation.
Yeah. You know where a great place to practice boundaries is when you're driving. Because the roads have these little lines And the cars have these little blinkers. And there's speed signs. And there's all kinds of ways that you can practice boundaries. And it's funny, I'm laughing about this, but it's been a practice for me because I tell you, I was out of the car. Like, you have this car and you have all these people around you that don't know how to drive. Newsflash, you don't know how to drive either. I mean, we all are doing the best we can. So one of the ways to practice boundaries is, okay, I'm going to obey the laws of the road. I mean,
Every stop sign is a suggestion.
Yeah, see, Brad?
Roll right through it.
How do you do in those roundabouts?
Well, I cut a lot of people off.
Yeah.
Yep. Man, this is so good. Are we going to talk about nopes? Let's talk about people's driving in Ohio. The other day we were at the mall dropping the boys off for something, and to get to the door we're going to, these two geese were just walking for 5 minutes in front of our car. I told you, no, this is how I feel driving in Ohio. Sorry, I love Ohio, by the way. I'm from Ohio, but
I say, but Becky, you're a fast driver too. But
yeah, we would we would destroy some
Is
things.
this confession time, Molly?
No, I love it. I'm like, because last time I was in the car with you, you were debating with someone who had a Tesla whose car could go faster. So I was like, I just love talking about cars with you and you because you guys both have strong opinions.
And mine was faster.
It was hilarious. So, but yeah, do you have any final thoughts before we do some hope or nopes?
I just want to encourage people that if you are feeling overwhelmed, you might have a boundary problem. If you are feeling resentful, you definitely have a boundary problem. And to define where that resentment is coming from and where it's living,
It's good.
it will give you the freedom that you need.
That's really good. That's awesome. So we're going to wrap up the episode like we always do with our hope or nopes. And so I have some random ones today. So you guys just have to tell me if it's hope or nope for the situation. And the first one is the NBA playoffs. We're past March Madness. We're into the NBA playoffs. And so do you have hope? Oh,
No.
that was both of you. Nope.
Who watches the NBA? I know a lot of
I
people
feel like
do.
a lot of people do.
Yeah, it's boring.
Okay, well then.
Since Michael Jordan left, I don't care.
It's all gone downhill.
Some people would argue LeBron James.
LeBron James.
No, Michael Jordan. No.
I'm with MJ. Let's go.
Okay, the next one is summer camp. Do you have hope or nope for summer camps?
When I was a teenager,
Mm-hmm.
oh yeah.
When you had kids, were you all about sending them to summer camp?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was like, you weren't. There's a lot of like.
But volunteering, no, that's a no.
Yeah, that's fair. Do you want to go to summer camp?
Nope.
I'll let you know high school camp dates. You can come along.
I would say there's hope for the camps that
Yes.
Mhm.
you guys are leading. Not for the hope for the camps that I went to.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
All right. Well,
We'll
there's
talk
some more
about
trauma
that,
here
yeah.
to talk about.
No, there's no trauma there.
Oh, shoot. Okay. And then this last one is actually, I have two more because I just want to know. Wakeboarding or skiing?
Oh, skiing.
Skiing. Is
Duh.
that an easy answer
Like,
for
is
you?
this-
There's no hope or nopes
Like
for it. Just I want to
water
know an either
wakeboarding
or.
and snow skiing, or
No, water skiing versus water wakeboarding.
wakeboarding for sure.
Ooh.
Actually, I like the surfing one where the big boat gets the wave going and you can surf.
Oh,
with-
okay.
That's a new thing.
Okay, cool. Becky's husband, so that if you guys don't know, is a professional skier, was a professional skier, is.
He's wanting to get the boat out today. And
Well,
it's 45 degrees outside.
Yeah, and so that's why she has skiing over wakeboarding. And then,
This was not a slight on Bruce, by the way. He's amazing.
no, I didn't think it was. No one thought that.
I can see by Becky's face she didn't like my vote for wakeboarding.
No, I can wakeboard. I was making the face about the surfing.
I love the surfing part.
Mm.
It's gentle on the body.
All right, last one is hope or nope for WrestleMania.
Oh my gosh.
Becky's son loves WrestleMania. This is why we're asking
Let's
her
go,
that.
Zach.
He loves WWE.
Let's go,
which
Zach.
is crazy. I actually have been, and you need to go at least once in your lifetime. Just because, I mean, of course, I'm a studier of people. Like I'm just fascinated with people, and
So much happening.
oh my, yeah.
Between the outfits.
And the crowd,
The
literally,
attitudes.
I've been to professional events, whether it's concerts or football games or whatever. People are moving all the time.
Mhm.
WrestleMania, they're in their seats
Really?
the whole time.
Not
All
missing.
65,000 of them.
Really?
I am not kidding. I've never seen anything like it in my life.
So
Like-
there's hope for WrestleMania.
Yeah, definitely hope.
Oh, listen. The NFL owns them, I think, or NBC. Somebody owns them, and yeah, they're
Wow.
going to take over the world.
I love that. But hey, that's our episode for today. We're so grateful that you chose to listen or watch, and make sure that you subscribe so you're the first person to know when an episode drops, and share this with everyone in your sphere of influence. And we will see you back here during the next episode.